Okay. Time being 4:30, I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Tom makes the motion to adopt. Is there a second? Mike seconds. Any changes to the agenda? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, first item, consider deeding the property at 401 South Pearl Street to the Lund Library Museum Board. Chad?
I'll take that one. Yep. So as most of you know, the library board and the fundraising group is looking at doing a project across from the current library. As you can see in the memo I provided, there are 4 parcels that are in that link that whole parcel property together. So I'll bring it up on our GIS a little bit differently. The 3 parcels on the southern end, the 413, 411, 405, those are all in the library board's name. And then the one at 401 is actually in the city's name. So to get it, and the plan is to put them all together in a new CSM into one parcel. And to clean that up is just better to have it all in one name. So the proposal right now is to just get the parcel at 401 South Pearl Street in consistency with the same name as the Library and Museum Board as the other 3 are. So I think it's just an official action, just if the council is in agreement with that, to deed that particular parcel over to the Library Museum Board into their name so that a new CSM can officially be created to put that whole thing into one parcel.
Chad, what is going into Malarkey's building?
The insurance company, I can't remember the name.
Cornerstone.
Cornerstone.
Oh,
He
okay.
was behind Subway, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, there, he's moving in over here for his practice, and I think he's gonna have some cars in there too, if I'm not mistaken. But
So everything from Malarkey's building to Spring Street.
actually, I believe this lot right here.
Malarkey has another lot.
Yeah, this one right here. If you can kind of see it in blue.
Malarkey
Oh.
has another, well,
Oh, in the
it's
back.
not Malarkey anymore, but, well, you know,
Okay,
Yep.
right next to it is parking for Malarkey.
okay.
So I can give you a little history on this if you'd like.
What-
Sure.
Can you come up to a microphone, or at least the one over there?
So Ron Steinhurst purchased that property, 3 years ago, maybe more, 4 years ago. And he deeded it to the city. And then Milt Staskell purchased or gave us money to purchase the grocery store, and that went into the library's name. So Ron intended it for a new library at the time that he purchased it. He just put it in the city's name instead of the library's name.
Yeah.
His intention was for it to go to the library.
Yes.
Good.
Go around.
All right, is there a motion to deed the property then? Tom, so moves. Is there a second?
Second.
John seconds. Any further discussion, questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, next item on the agenda, discussion on reorganization of Parks and Rec departments. Chad?
So as you all know, we've been working towards some reorganization in the office. Our prioritization has been hiring the building inspector and then the city clerk positions. And obviously those are now filled. And so the next focus is work on the Parks and Rec and Public Works duties, backfilling those jobs. So been talking with Mayor Mark, talking with internal staff, going through some different options. A little history, and most of you know this, when I started here, we had separate Park and Rec and Public Work Director positions. Over time, we tried putting them together once in 2018, just to try a different structure. And the main goal of that was to streamline the staff at the municipal garage, just to make sure that we're sharing resources and staff and things like that at the garage. That's given me a really good opportunity to evaluate that setup over the last couple of years. Pros to it, yep, it does streamline some of the functions under one department head that occur at the garage. But like I said in my memo, the main con right now is obviously the workload. Putting those 2 director positions into one job has been, that's been a lot. Not that we're complaining about it whatsoever, but it has been a lot just to make sure that. And the biggest challenges have been this attention to details. And then I have had challenges getting out in the field, getting out, looking at staff, interacting with staff. I feel like a lot of times I've been stuck in the office more than I should have been. So there's been pros and cons to that whole situation. So we've been talking about, how do we backfill those positions? Do we look at, filling the position right now as a director of public services? We have had discussions in the past about maybe putting an assistant director underneath there to kind of help with the workload, but obviously with budgets, that hasn't been something I proposed just because of the budgets the way they have been over the last couple of years. So with that said, I'm at the mindset right now, and this is for discussion only at this point in time. I wouldn't mind getting your feedback as a consensus as we move forward, working through this process. But I'm of the opinion right now, since we don't have that a director and assistant director positions established right now, I do feel since we're kind of starting over in a sense, it probably would be best right now to split them back up into the director of Parks and Rec and the director of Public Works. Just to have that attention to focusing. And if you look at my memo, I did give you a general overview of some of those duties. I mean, we've got the parks, we've got the recreation, the aquatics, the senior services and transit, urban forestry, we've got special event permits that come out. Currently, the New Line of Access is still involved with that in the public, the Parks and Rec director side. And then we got the streets, wastewater treatment plant, facilities, there's key management, there's fleet inventory. I mean, those are just high level type duties that are within each position. So I'm of the mindset right now of pursuing it to the point of kind of splitting it back up, but with the understanding we don't have funding to hire a second full-time position. So is there a way we can kind of split these up internally yet and kind of move down the line even more and kind of split up those duties? So in this scenario right now, very conceptual, we've got a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. If we would make this happen the way this is kind of looking at right now, we've got some options to look at the programming side of Parks and Recreation. Can we utilize people down at the pool a little bit more to maybe reorganize them a little bit more to help with the programming end of it? I provided you a general overview chart organizational chart of what we have today. Director of Public Services, and then all the different program areas, whether it's recreation, facilities, street park superintendent, cable producer, wastewater treatment plant lead operator. And under recreation right now is the recreational staff, senior center staff, and pool staff under Ginger. Like I said, conceptual, if we would split them back up, to try to alleviate just not putting everything under one person. This scenario may include the elimination of the recreation superintendent position, making a park and rec director position, may have some programming functions under the park and rec director position as programming, recreation and programming, may include utilizing the recreation staff, the senior center staff, and the pool staff. We have 2 full-time staff at the pool. And is there a way we can reorganize that a little bit more to help alleviate some of the programming functions that we would lose if we wouldn't have a full-time rec superintendent position? Because again, we don't have the funding just to add another position into the loop. So I guess the higher level view or discussion I wanted to kind of have at this point in time is, what's your thoughts on a proposal if we split these back up into the director of Parks and Rec and Public Works director position? And then there's still a lot of work, a lot of homework, I's to dot, T's to cross under our belt to see if it would work. Maybe do a little reorganization here on the recreation superintendent or the recreation programming side of things. Again, like I said in my memo, some of the pros would be having some attention to details. There is something to be said about, in the director position to have a little bit more attention to those details about what's going on in the streets and be able to go out, and see street projects a little bit more. Or, on the park and rec director side, I haven't had a lot of time to go out, in the parks and just walk around and see how things are going as I would have liked to in the last couple of years. So there is something to be said about having those attention to details capability with all that. Not so much a con, but a consideration. Yep. The administrative assistants and the street park and superintendent would once again, report to have 2 bosses like it was when I started here. And I thought in back of my, as I'm looking through this, I'm like, okay, we want to make sure we're focusing and keeping a function or priority to make sure that we are utilizing the street staff and the park staff to be able to flip over and help. If there's a big street project, we're grabbing park staff. If there's the big park project, we are grabbing street staff and moving them over, and still having a single superintendent position does allow for that. If the superintendent needs street staff over here, he moves them over to the parks. If he needs park staff go over there, he moves them to the streets. One benefit of the new garage that we have, like I said in my memo, the old garage was split. I mean, physically split. The guys barely saw each other. The street guys were on one side, the park guys were on the other side, and they really didn't see much. Now with the new garage, they have to interact more. There's a lot more collaboration and coordination and communication with them. So that has helped in making sure there's enough, focus in moving things around. In this thought process right now, to also help alleviate the director of Parks and Rec with the rec programming aspect of it, option might be that we have the facilities superintendent report directly to the director of public works for all the facility work, the maintenance and the repairs and things like that. Wastewater lead operator, obviously that would still be under the director of public works along with all the street guys. And an option, I don't know if there's still things I'm thinking about with this one, but with the cable producer, it was under the director of Parks and Rec. Do we finagle that in a way that it's reporting directly to the city administrator position? There's still considerations we got to look at with that. Or do we put it back under the director of Parks and Recreation with that? So I guess right now I just want to have a general consensus or thoughts from the Finance and Personnel Committee. You guys nodding your head with this setup? I mean, like I said, we don't have funding for another position, but we need to figure out a way to kind of fill these roles, backfill these duties. These are very important positions, but we've got a lot of work yet to do to see how we would finagle some of these positions and how we would go about filling them with current staff. I mean, if you're changing current existing staff and changing position descriptions, that's a consideration and process to go through too. So not ready to make an official recommendation at this point in time. We got some homework to do, but just a thought process of what we thought about so far.
Looking at that, one thing I see, you've got the cable producer
Mhm.
strictly reports to city administrator,
Mhm.
which almost puts him on the same level as the director of public works, the director of parks.
We need to work-
Do we
need to
really
work through
want that in the fact that, could he then try to say he should get the same amount of pay as those two people?
Just because you're at a certain level, I mean, the wages are created based on the job duties. So that's another one. Like I said, this isn't, we got a lot of homework to do. At what level is this cable producer? Just because he would report to the city administrator, is he at this level? Not necessarily. I've talked to some other city administrators and they have non-exempt, non-department head staff reporting to them. I want to get some more information before we do this. But I've had internal staff question that too. If we did something like this, does that automatically make them a department head? Do they automatically have to be an exempt employee? We have to work
One
that out.
person there, who would he report to? If there's only one person in that cable producer,
Who would he report to?
I say there's only one person.
He wouldn't supervise anyone.
No, that's what I'm saying. There's only one person there. Why couldn't he just report right to the city administrator? He's just another employee,
Again, you got to
not a
put some more.
department head.
more
It's
work
not a
onto that.
department.
Correct.
I would see no problem with him reporting directly to the city administrator just as he is as an employee.
I like that idea in the sense that we've talked a lot about the cable producer going out and doing things with economic development. And the city administrator is the one that really works with economic development. So I see the relationship between those two really being beneficial. So kind of like that idea.
And again, I mean, with all this, legalities, setting precedents for things, we got work cut out for us. We want to make sure we do this right the first time.
So you've been here long enough to do both situations.
Parks and Rec and Public Works?
Yeah, you were Park and Rec first, then you were both. They combined them.
And I've been doing Public Works since 2018, so I mean, obviously less on that side of it.
Well, you were here when they combined the two too.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, is it too much for one person to do both jobs?
I think especially bringing a new person in, absolutely. I mean, it was a lot for me and I wasn't getting everything done. Like I said, I wanted to see myself
That's it right there. If you weren't getting everything done, it's too much for
Yeah.
one person.
And we've talked about,
These jobs need to be done.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. I understand the legal part where you got to figure stuff out, but and how does the staff feel about doing it this way?
yep, and I've been having conversations with them, you know, and they've been giving me input too, you know, especially on the programming side of things, you know. I've had several conversations, have had conversations with Ted, you know, he would have a different he would have a different department head to report to if he stayed under the Director of Public Works compared to before, you know, Director of Parks and Recreation. So.
When we have, like Luke does now, Luke is a working foreman, you might call him, or working lead person. So he in a way is like a supervisor for the streets.
He is the superintendent for the streets.
Right.
Yep.
So he reports to you now.
Mhm.
So, and that was kind of the way it has always been. Well, except when we have Bob Fritz, we used to have a street boss say for the street department.
Mhm.
Now we have like a lead person there. Can't you have the lead person for the park? Have those two guys report to the street and park director? Have say the lead person for the street department like Luke and somebody for the park, and have them report to the, whatever position you'd call it, maybe you would call it street park superintendent.
Mhm.
So like you got up there right now.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that work? And would you eliminate one position then?
So the street park superintendent used to be two superintendents.
Right.
That was before my time here. There was a street superintendent and park superintendent, and because of union, the way the union was set up, they weren't working at all.
Yeah.
It was a superintendent
Right.
position.
Right, that was Bob Fritz.
And then before my time, it was combined into one position so that the single superintendent was over both streets and parks program areas. Now, the superintendent after Act 10 was allowed to do some work. Then it was a little bit hairy, you know, obviously Act 10 with the unions and stuff like that. But after Act 10, then, I mean, the superintendent could do some work here and there. So they could jump in a snowplow every once in a while. So I wouldn't necessarily consider Luke as a lead man because he's doing more superintendent work.
Yeah.
Is he jumping in a snowplow every once in a while and doing some work? Yep. He's jumping in as needed, but I wouldn't consider him as a lead man. Now, if we want to put a lead man in the streets and lead man in the parks, Luke and I have had chats on that just to give him a little bit more hierarchy, you know, and I like that idea just because if Luke goes on vacation, then who's designated in charge at that point in time instead of just picking somebody, okay, today you're in charge, you know, or you're more senior, you're in charge. So we can talk about that down the road too, but I still think the way this is set up with the superintendent, I mean, with the day-to-day operations, you need somebody with those day-to-day operations to organize that and you know, organize that crew, working staff.
One of the things I wanted to just clarify too is, you know, just talking about the cable producer and you're right, it is just a one person show, but we need to be careful on how we are classifying people and where they are reporting. You know, we currently have one department head reporting to the city administrator who's exempt. They don't qualify for overtime. They don't supervise anybody, you know, and then now if you're going to bring in a cable producer and bringing in a similarly situated person, but we're treating them differently, we need to be careful. So that was one of the concerns I had brought to Chad, you know, that he had talked about when he had talked to staff. it's not a matter of just shoving people in a spot. We have to really be careful at what we're doing legally on that, and what kind of precedent are we setting? And the DOL, the Department of Labor, is in favor of the employees. So if an employee, whoever the cable producer may be, you may have a man versus a woman thing. You just have to be very careful on where you're classifying people. So I just wanted to make sure that as these decisions are made, that is also being thought of.
So yes, we've got homework to do yet. We're not ready for a recommendation. We're just conceptual. That's why we've got conceptual, going on. But more so, I wanted to kind of discuss a little bit more thought process of splitting it back up into 2 director positions and kind of get you guys gut reaction on that, because that's a big change right there. And then continue to work on how everything else would work out underneath that.
And I think the director of public works definitely needs to have some kind of engineering skills. Who needs to understand the ins and outs when they talk to engineers. They know what the terminology is when it comes to engineers. They have their whole different language than the rest of the world in that area. So you just really need somebody who can talk to engineers and knows what they're talking about. And because I feel like it's an area in which we have not had an expertise or somebody who actually knew they could go out to the street with an engineer and look and say, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know, I've worked in this field and I've had an education. Even if it's a 2-year degree coming out of the tech, because they have those nowadays, an engineering degree, just to understand what's being sold to us. I think it would take our community a long way.
And to piggyback off of that, splitting these back up, position descriptions would have to be created and updated along those same lines. So you're getting.
We had one before, we had Jeff, and we farmed everything out anyway. So I can understand your feelings on that, but I don't know if we need another engineer.
I
We had
think
one
we need an
in,
engineer so we stop farming so much stuff out.
Huh?
I think we need an engineer here so we stop farming so much
if
stuff
if
out.
we can do it, we can't afford that right now.
But some of the things that can be done that the engineers are doing for us can be done by somebody like that. The bidding process.
Yes and no. I think
yeah.
if you're going to have a director if you're going to have a director and a full-time engineer like we had at one time, then you're talking about that. If you're going to have a director with engineering experience, no, there's no way that director is going to have time to put those packets together. Maybe small stuff, maybe like a sidewalk replacement, but like a Warner Allen project, no. Even the counties, you talk to like Outagamie County, they farm out to McMahon. They're farming out. Mike, we've talked about that when we go to the Outagamie County Highway Department meetings. They're farming out all their bigger projects to engineers.
It's cheaper.
The McMahons, the Omnis. I mean, they do that.
So they
have
don't
their
have an
engineers.
engineer on staff?
They have engineers on staff, but they kind of manage it.
Right.
They're not creating the bid documents. They're not creating the specifications. They're still farming that out at the county levels. So even having the engineer on staff, and I do agree. I mean, you got to have someone in that position who kind of knows the lingo and knows what they're talking about. But I don't think you're going to have enough time for that to manage the whole department and create those bid specifications that are that thick and do all that together. No. You would need to have a full-time engineer like you had at one time, because we had a director of public works and a full-time engineer at one time.
To what Judy said, though, I do think somebody that has an understanding of basic soil compaction and street opening permit, some contractor or some outside agency opens up a street to fix somebody's water lateral and they put substandard fill in there, and then we got a big sinkhole in a brand new street 2 years after. Just somebody that has some kind of basic knowledge of that and follow through to make sure that everybody that's digging into our streets, you don't want to hire us Omni Engineering to check on Mid-State Asphalt's work. or whatever, you know.
Depending
what
what
I
the
mean?
project is, you know, like a Warner Allen that we're doing, yeah, they're coming out and making sure that all the subcontractors are connections are correct, and they're putting in the right pipe sizes, and they're doing the right, putting in the right stone dimensions and the widths and the compactions, and there's a lot of on-site administration engineering that's got to be done during a road project like that. So yeah, that's what they do. But for
Kelly?
smaller projects like a sidewalk replacement project, that could be done in-house by someone.
Because, I think of some projects that we've done and some very big ones where I feel like the city was slighted as far as being able to know that I can talk about the street projects over here. I mean, we didn't pay that project off and they were coming back and putting, concrete down. And it's like, why wasn't this, why as a city are we not following up on issues and concerns better? Our city garage.
But Warner Allen
Yeah.
or
Wyman Street. The construction of that. I mean, let's how many of you have driven it and thought, oh my God, we just put this street in and we haven't even paid it off. And here we are bumping through it and they're in here fixing it. I mean, there needs to be some kind of accountability to the construction projects. And if you don't have the time to do that, then that's where on the huge dollar amounts that we're spending, we're not doing ourselves any justice. So I think about the city garage. I mean, there were so many issues and concerns coming through that garage, and the money that we spent on it. I'm not sure, so I'm not telling you I think anybody did anything wrong, but it's hard for me to swallow when I see the kind of money that we spend and then hear that they don't have any heat or they don't have, then why, who is supposed to be talking to these engineers who we're paying a fortune to and saying, get it fixed and making sure that we're following through on that process. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm not saying that anybody hasn't done their job, but I'm saying as a community, we should be very concerned about those kinds of things. So if we can find somebody who maybe has worked in that kind of capacity before with these large, we know what the city's going to expand huge in the next 10 years. I talk about this all the time. We're going to have Highway 15 come in, the downtown project. We need to figure out how are we going to make people who we pay lots of money to accountable. And I think that's the end of the line there. How are we going to make sure things are getting done properly? Because I have a feeling things are going to move and they're going to move very swiftly in the next 10 years. And we need to make sure as a community that we're taking care of ourselves and making sure our money is being spent and we're getting the kind of product that we thought we were going to get from contractors.
Chad, with the county, as far as highways compared to the city streets, the highway commissioner is a PE, professional engineer. And then there's Mark Kohler, Korth or something like that. He is as well.
I don't know, Mark.
He's in on all our meetings. And so that way they can keep an eye on them when we get the proposals, because we had 3 proposals at our last meeting on, I forget the project now. But then both Mark and
Casey?
the commissioner can go over that stuff and before they tell us what.
And that's the reason why you need someone who kind of has that background by far.
I definitely think that we got to split up the two like we have. I would like to know if we can get somebody out of the tech with a 2-year degree or whatever would have any knowledge. It's sitting on utility board, there have been some slip ups. And I think it's too much for one person to have both of those jobs for starter. We definitely have to split them like you have there. I would like to see the director of public works have some knowledge. I mean, we don't have to do it tomorrow, but we should maybe start looking into where we can come up with somebody with some knowledge.
And I wouldn't necessarily get somebody right out of like a tech school for the director position, just because not only there's the engineering, but there's the management of employees. So you need to have experience in knowing how to manage employees and years of experience. And someone who's never managed, you know, numerous employees and then go, yeah, they got to have some experience with that. But having something degree behind it is a good thing.
And what about somebody from in-house going to tech for training for engineering? So
There's
there's
another option.
another choice for doing that. And that way we have someone that's a city employee already, and he can do it part-time, so you pay his wages to go to tech school. That's another option to look at.
And they have, these
Definitely.
positions have a lot, like we talked about the engineering, we talked about the management. I mean, there's, what else? I mean, we're looking at ordinances. I mean, you got to have some knowledge on ordinances and how those affect type things, and computer knowledge with a lot, GIS, and there's a lot of stuff going on. We're just talking about the public works side of it.
You're never going to get anybody that knows it all. Anybody that comes into a position has to grows into position.
Job.
I mean, you're not going to hire somebody that knows how to do all this stuff, just like say, oh yeah, that, if he is, he ain't going to be working for New London. That's a fact. I mean, you ain't going to get anybody that knows all this stuff, and you're going to pay him the money we're going to pay, just that guy's not around.
You're right.
So if you get somebody that's a city employee already, send them to training,
That is a
you know,
good
then
option.
then maybe that's another option for somebody's,
For any of these.
Yeah.
for any of them positions.
And then
Promoting.
Huh?
I always like promoting
Yep.
from within.
And then giving somebody the opportunity to go get absolutely
Right.
get educated, and then kind of hold them hostage for a while.
Yeah,
So you
make-
say,
you know,
we'll
tell them
pay
you have
for
to
it,
stay
but
here
we're
for
going to
10
keep
years.
you here.
We're going to send you to school for 10 years, like they do in the military.
Yep.
I mean, if you go, they'll send you to college, but you got to stay in the military for 10 years. So we'll send you to school if you stay here for 10 years.
Yep.
No different-
Exactly.
Yeah, no different than an apprenticeship.
Right.
And I guess one of the fortunate things that we have is we've had Chad sit in the position. So he's a great resource for that person too, coming in and management and all those kinds of things that maybe that person needs some, you know, training on. Chad would be in a position that he has, you know, at least the last, you know, how many years of knowledge of how that position operates. And you definitely know the crew and the wastewater treatment plant. So you also have him as an inside person. And then if you're sending them outside, it's just a win-win for the city. But yes, Bob, that is a really great option.
So utility does, your utility, if you take an apprenticeship at utility, you're going to, on the one side, you're going to 4 years of school. You have to sign an agreement that you will work 4 years after you come out of school, or you will pay for all the school and all they've already spent on. So, I mean, like you're saying, if you move a guy, yeah, he's gonna have to be committed to us for X amount of years. I have no problem with taking, send the guy to apprenticeship school.
And it won't be the first time the city actually did that. So we have a couple other positions where we have sent people to higher education and kind of said, you know, we'd like a little bit on the back end, some kind of commitment.
And to what Judy was saying about holding, when we hire contractors to do work for us, whether it's build a building or do a road, we have a city attorney that looks over those agreements and contracts with those vendors. And we just maybe need to put more teeth to them contracts. For example, if you fail to send us an invoice for work done for 2 years, 90 days, you know? But we can put more teeth in those contracts or penalties for jobs not done. You know, if a brand new road gets built and the manhole's 4 inches under the, somebody's going to fix that, not us, you know? And so we can do a better job as a council and that with our legal team to review those contracts to make sure that we're not getting bamboozled by a furnace salesman.
Mike?
I look at that, but the attorney doesn't have the slightest idea of what, he does not go out and look at the street. Yeah, he can write up some fancy language, but we have got to have a person that with enough knowledge to go out there and look at what they're doing at the time. You know, but whether we take somebody from street crew and start teaching him some of the stuff, but that guy has to be able to go out there at the time that they're putting in fill, that they're putting in whatever they're putting in. He has to have a little bit of knowledge, really what they're doing. He has to have the time to go out there and look at these projects.
So in a nutshell, I mean, we keep on going around and around with the
Right.
details and
Yeah.
everything, but I was just kind of looking at a higher end, you know, does the committee nod their head on this type of direction? Again, we don't have all the details figured out. I mean, there's classifications that got to get figured out and how we would fill them, how would we open them. There's current employees in these positions. So there's a lot of considerations yet, but I guess the main point right now is you guys nodding your head for splitting up those two director positions and then just continuing that research. I didn't want to go too far with this. And then all of a sudden you guys had a totally different opinion on your ends too.
If we're in favor, raise your hand.
That's what we're looking at right now. Just a consensus. So we'll continue to work with this.
Continue to work on it.
And then either ask for more feedback or bring future proposals together. So that's where we're at.
What kind of time frame are you looking at, Chad?
The sooner the better.
Obviously. I'm just
Um,
looking from a recruitment perspective and, you know, I guess I'm just looking for what's like a,
Every month, I think we've got enough time to do these things, and there's so many things that pop up in a month that take your time away that, you know, these things are getting on the back burner. So, you know, I'd like to have the finalized org chart narrow down in the next month, maybe to bring that back to finance personnel for a nod, head nod.
Okay.
But again, there's a lot of, well, you know, we talked about it. I mean, all these different things that I's dotted and T's crossed before we officially open these things up. So position descriptions that gotta get filled. And, you know, if we're making position descriptions for department heads, those gotta come back, get approved, you know, so
I know we can't, you know, have
love
a
to say in a month or two, but
steadfast date, but it would be nice to have a target date at least, just so we're, you know, just because there's other things that there's other dominoes that need to happen after this is figured out. So
I'd love to say in a couple months, you know, that we're opening some positions up, but I don't want to rush it either. You know what I mean? It depends on,
maybe by next month, we could maybe have a target
we'll see,
date.
we'll see.
So
Yep. Mhm.
just, yeah, because I mean, it's going to be a lot of work for everybody involved. And then just if we have a general anticipation.
But I'd rather take the time and do it right. I don't want to rush. I don't want to say, boom, it's a month and all of a sudden we're trying to rush into something and we don't have, you know, you brought a couple of good points when we've had conversations about what we got done. So we want to make sure we're, you know, not jumping into something and rushing into it either. So, but sooner the better so that we can focus on keeping things going. So.
Okay, lots of good suggestions and to be continued. All right, moving on then, to item number 4, resolution authorizing support for the strong state and local partnership, shared revenue, critical services. Who's that?
Okay, so we get quite a few emails from the league. I'm sure you're all aware of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. And one of the emails that I've received in the last month caught my eye, and it was support for shared revenue. And as you know, I talk about shared revenue all the time because it's a very large portion of our budget. It's about $2 million. We get a utility aid portion in there, an expenditure restraint, and then what they call shared revenue. So what the league is looking for from us is for us to pass this resolution in favor of them going to the state government and encouraging them to start to increase shared revenue to communities. We have not seen at the City of New London, they did a stop to increasing of shared revenue in the state of Wisconsin in 2002, and we have not seen an increase since. The purpose of shared revenue is to give communities money so that it takes away some of the burden to the taxpayers. So we have not in the state of Wisconsin seen a decrease to that burden to taxpayers since 2002. And what has happened in between is that we have seen our tax rate go up. So what has to happen and able to afford in just the little bit of an increase, I shouldn't say a little bit, but the operational increases within budgets is that those have to go on to the tax levy. So health insurance, wages, all of those kinds of things. Also is the reason that we have lost employees through this time since 2002, and we've looked to be more efficient, because if you increase something somewhere, you have to decrease it somewhere else because we just don't have the funding. Plus, we are currently in a zero expenditure or tax levy increase. So definitely you increase somewhere, you have to find somewhere to decrease. So by passing this resolution, so you can see it's been 90 years since this local relationship has happened. And in the past 20 years, the shared revenue has been cut by $94 million. And that is to all communities within the city. So when the state goes through their budget process, that's why I'm always talking about, I'm constantly watching the state budget process, because they have a bucket of money that is for shared revenue. And what they do is they keep decreasing, and they did some large decreases over time. So if you look at the state shared funding, it started off very high and then it went down and went down. And since 2002, it's remained flat. And as we know, none of our operational budgets have remained flat. And what happens again is that if you continue to put it in the operational budget, you have nothing left for capital. And we know that our capital budget has been dwindling. Another big concern, and we'll be talking about this, is the American Rescue Plan and that effect on what the state government is going to look at that dollars as. Are they going to look at the American Rescue Plan and say, we don't have to increase shared revenue because all of these communities are getting the federal funding now, and they should be okay because the federal government has given some money to the communities. So by passing this, I will forward this on to the state of Wisconsin, and they will utilize this through the budget process, which begins this Friday. They have I'm sure, just a number of communities that will be passing this resolution. So that way, when they go meet with the legislators, they have this information available at their fingertips, and they can say the city of New London and the city of Oshkosh and the city of Appleton have all stated how important it is that we remain fully funded at the shared revenue for the shared revenue dollars. So that is the purpose of this resolution.
You need a motion?
Yes.
I do.
Tom, you make a motion. Go ahead. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mike seconds it. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Judy.
And on that same note, and I already talked about it, they are calling it the ARP, which is the American Rescue Plan. So no, this is the first time in history. We are now hitting the history books as a community, state government, federal government. First time ever that the federal government has pushed funding to municipal communities. So I just wanted to let you know that I am keeping an eye on this funding also. The city has been earmarked for a dollar amount at this time, and it could change. And remember, this is all moving targets at this point. The league is who I look to for any explanations of how are we going to be able to spend this money? What does that look like? One of the things I'm going to have to do in the next month or so is figure out how much revenue did we lose from 2019 to 2020. I'll probably do maybe like a 3-year average, and then to look at 2020, and we'll be able to fill that gap with some of the money. And then it won't have to be used in the way in which they have said you can utilize that money. So that will go into the general fund, and the other dollars will have to be used in the manner of which they tell you that it can be used. And it's very specific at this time. So the league, again, I'm sure their attorneys are looking through that language to let us know exactly how we will be able to utilize that funding. I'm going to tell you that there is no recommendation that I will make that that is used for operational dollars. I will suggest and recommend that we use all these dollars for capital, because if you can't fill the hole the next year, you're going to get your community in a lot of trouble. So it should be one shot. We needed this money today and we won't need it next year. So you can keep in mind those kinds of things as we go through this process. Of course, Chad and I have had a great long discussion. I'm constantly updating him on what I know and where we're going to go with this. We'll meet with other department heads. All departments will have a look into what this is going to look like. We're not going to leave anyone out. And then see where we go from there. We'll begin to prioritize. Maybe we grab the capital projects plan and we take a look at that and start saying, we never thought we could do this. Fill some gaps, all kinds of things that we will look at to be able to utilize that funding. At this time, I also believe that we have to have that spent by 2024. So we need to get moving forward on this. We know that every year goes faster. So we need to start prioritizing and take a look at the dollars and see where we're going to be spending them over time. So, and we know that putting projects together and bidding processes all take time. So it's a very exciting time for all the communities. I guess, you know, everywhere, statewide or countrywide, to be able to receive this funding now. We need to be good stewards of that funding and put that to work in our community. So I look forward to that and working through that in the next couple of years.
Good. So any questions for Judy on the American Rescue Plan? I assume there's no action that.
Nope, I just wanted to let you know that we are keeping abreast of both the financial part and then how those funds can be used.
Okay.
And we will definitely be talking about this probably. I'll try to update you maybe even monthly. The more I know, the more you're going to know. So we'll keep talking about it and discussing it moving forward.
Very good. All right, then we move on to number 6, Finance Director Monthly Reports. Judy?
All right, so we are, I can't believe we are a quarter of the year, and actually we are at February. We are at February, actually, 2 months back. And currently in our expenditure budget, oops, I suppose I should put it up. Make it a little bigger. We anticipate to be about 16%, but we have categories, general government, we anticipate over because all of our health insurance, our insurances, fleet insurance, all those insurances are paid ahead of time. So to be at 25% versus 17 is the norm at this time in that category. And you can see everything else is running about average. So we're in good shape there. Anyone have any questions on any particular line item? As you can see here, the insurance is at 77%, and that's what makes that general government line item a little higher than you would expect at this time as the norm. But otherwise, it looks like everything is sitting where we would anticipate. And again, I highlight these as we go through the year if I see any changes. Looks like Nicole hasn't gotten the little on the bottom.
Yep,
I have to have Michelle show her how that works.
It's on there,
This one has one?
right there,
Oh, yeah.
but not all of
Okay,
them.
but not, okay. I see it now. Any other questions on the expenditure side? All right, then we'll take a look at the revenue side. And I did book about 56% of our tax revenue because at the end of January and February, we received part of the dollars from the county for that settlement. Highway aids, we got a quarter of that payment, and otherwise things are just trickling in over time. This is very normal for a February to look at revenues about 27%, 30% at this time. So actually our percentage of revenues is higher than our expenditures at this point. As we do take in a lot, January, February, very large months of taking in money, August, and then again in October. So those are when our our largest amount of dollars flow into the city. Any questions on any revenues?
What line is wheel tax on there?
Wheel tax is not on here. Wheel tax has its own report, and we'll be coming up to that.
Okay.
Okay. So that's that. And here's the wheel tax. So as of February, now remember it says 9716, but that only has, we received January and February. So really it's only a month. But at the end of February, we received $9,716. We had a little bit of money flow in this year for High Street. I'm not sure why we had a little bit of residual. The revenue expenditure to date, we have a little $9,574 in there. And then again, I have the list down here of those projects that have been completed with our wheel tax dollars. I did have somebody call me actually on this and was questioning exactly those questions of what have we spent this money on? What are we going to spend this money on? And Nicole got the call and I called them back, but I haven't heard back from them. So I did leave a little bit of explanation for him and then said I would be glad to, if you could just give me a call back.
Believe it or not, I had all this information when I went around campaigning, and I went to at least 200 houses, and I never had one person ask about the wheel tax. So I mean, as much criticism as we're getting, apparently the message must be getting out to people that they're not really complaining about it.
That's what I'm hoping, that maybe it's finally been communicated enough. Now, this is on our website. Missy put it as one of the, what do you call those, featured items? So,
News feed features items.
yeah, so as soon as they get on our website, it should say wheel tax and they can just click on it and it'll open it up. So it's not hidden anywhere, it's right there in plain view. And we will go to assigned and unassigned. Oops, I missed assigned and unassigned. Sorry about that, apologies. Nothing has changed on here since January. I'm assuming Chad has talked to you a little bit about the docks. Okay. So we talked about that too, utilizing some of these boat launch funds, 138,000. He was a little concerned about using it up, but I said that's what it's there for. That's actually a very good idea. If we go over, it's fine too. We just borrow from our unassigned fund balance, and then through time it goes back in. That way when people are saying, why aren't you using our boat docks, we can say, well, we actually used it and then some. And then I think he's got some great additions that he's looking at putting into our parks or into those dock systems. So that was the only change for that, or that we talked about. No change yet. Everything else remained the same. And then we have the bonding. Maybe not. Yep, there it is. We just started on the bonding side. So the biggest one on here is the Werner Allen Road. There's some work being done on the jail toilets and sinks next door and their cabinetry. But otherwise, all of the rest, I know Chad has taken care of the roof projects. Those that have all been bid out. And yep, and that's the rest of it. And then the trail we know has been accepted and that'll be moving forward too. So I think as Chad has indicated, I'm sure has told you that we've received some really good bids. So we'll be talking about and discussing some of this funding maybe we can use in other areas. But we'll definitely let those projects play out first, because as we all know, sometimes things can change over time and you can get change orders and things. So we'll let these play out first and then we'll see where we're at. But a lot of great things getting done this year too. I mean, this is a great place to come to if people are saying, what are you doing in your city this year? I don't see anything being done. And here's a list of things that are being done this year. And then we have the wastewater treatment plant bonding, and they're kind of at a stalemate over there waiting for that paint project to get done, and then they'll move forward. And he does anticipate some of these dollars actually to be left over. So we'll be talking about how we'll be spending them. Well, I guess we'll wait and see how this this all wraps up. And then we'll look at the projects over there. And that'll be brought to Public Works and you guys will prioritize how this will be spent. And I think that's those. Any questions about anything?
All right, then we move on to Finance Director report.
Most of my month was spent anticipation of the audit. So I finished a lot of final audit work. They were actually here, came in person. We were out of the office for a while, as you all know. So they were supposed to be in the office that Thursday, and then we rescheduled, which I thought was really nice because I thought, okay, we're probably going to be remote again this year and just deal with it. But then they came back and said they actually wanted to come in person. So I was thrilled with that. So went ahead and scheduled them, and they were here last week, Thursday. So that went really well. And we'll work through a few things as time goes on here, and we expect that audit to be presented to you guys usually at finance in July. Because we do have to wait for some other paperwork that has to be done. Utility audit has to be completed. There's a wastewater treatment plant report that has to be done before it can be done. We'll work through that. Everyone in the office is part of that, answering questions. Missy and I did receive our final approval on those projects from the state of Wisconsin. So I spent a lot of work, or a lot of time yesterday or the day before, putting together the packet, as Jed knows, because with the Newton Blackmore Trail, he had the same packet of stuff, but we will be receiving that money. And that is super exciting. So we'll be talking about that project as part of all of the capital funding and trying to get, some work done over there and making that all worth people's time going through that process. So finish all that paperwork. Again, I watched the state budget, the federal government budget, just keeping an eye on all that. Sue and I did the mobile home tax that was due. Oh, I worked on the boat launch payment processing system, and Luke and I worked on that a lot. So I didn't want anyone to know because I want them yelling at me. No, but Luke and I worked through that process, and it worked. Luke went over there and he gave it a try, and it worked for him the first time. Not, I don't want to say anything, but it was super exciting. It's hard to believe you work with people in California and Texas and all over the place, and then our machine works here in New London, Wisconsin. The whole thing is just mind-boggling to me. But just to keep the communication moving forward and keeping all the players together, and then working with Luke to get that started, it's a great asset to the community. So I look forward to seeing how that may or may not change our revenue through time.
Ventec seems like a very nice company.
Yes.
We got the stuff from.
Yep.
They respond right back to you right away as soon as you have a comment to them.
Mm-hmm. So, yep, it was a great relationship, but a great working relationship, but it was 6 months in the working behind the scenes, getting that all. I finally took Chad out of it. I'm like, you got enough to do. I'll just, and then I'll let you know if I need to. And yeah, it actually, I wasn't expecting it to happen that day that Luke came in. So I was like, that's really cool. I attended a number of meetings. There's a lot going on with that federal American Rescue Plan besides the dollars that are coming to communities that we need to keep track of. And then Jill had a little bit of a vacation, so I had some payroll and HR items that I took care of while she was out. Just a lot going on right now, but that's all good.
Okay, any questions for Judy?
Yeah,
Tom?
I should have asked you before when the bonding was going on. Is there a certain amount of time that we have to have that money spent?
We just bonded. Not next year, but the year after, 23. But we already, everything's all bid and out, and so we're not gonna have any problems. And then if they're not so picky anymore, so if we know we're gonna pick, so if we know we have a project, so we have money left over and we know we have a project that we want to move forward on, I can always set it up as an accounts payable in the books, just so we're moving forward on completion and we're not holding the dollars just for interest purposes. That's where we'd really get in trouble.
We don't want you to do that.
And I don't want to do that.
So the library roof project might be a good example of that, because we didn't do the library roof project this year because of the lack of shingles.
So depending, hopefully in the next year we get that done, but I mean,
Exactly.
that could be an option that we can't get the product. We have to wait a while.
Yep. So then I would set up a payable, knowing approximately how much that was going to cost. And then it would still be a reduction on bonding. We'd be okay. You're welcome.
Very good. Okay, item number 8, questions and answers in general. Anybody? All right, if not, this is my last meeting as your fearless leader. I want to thank you all for your help and participation these many years. Especially want to thank Tom. He's been a very active member, contributed a lot to this committee over the many years that I've known him. He's asked a lot of questions where I thought, boy, I wish I would ask that question and so forth. And it was good that I think that whole committee found out the answer to a lot of the questions you asked, Tom. So we really do appreciate your help these many years. So with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mike moves. Is there a second? Second. Dave seconds. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.